Okay, now we've got the elevator arm on here, just like it said in the manual. Got it moving around nice and smooth. Make sure it's smooth. You've got the small screw through here. You've got the grub screw here with thread lock on it. Everything's moving nice and smooth. Next thing you're going to want to do is put this thing on the front. If you can notice, I kind of started getting the battery mount. I just kind of hand tightened it. We're still trying to test out the latest recommended method for the tray location. But we'll put this on here nice and tight once we've got these other parts on here. So next part we're going to want to do is make sure we put this on here with these little standoffs here are going to be used through the long standoffs that came with the set in the front part, and these are plastic, so we're screwing into plastic. You can use a little CA, don't use thread lock. And then in the back here, notice we have the 3x10 screws for the back part, so we're just putting it in, matching up the two lines, and we're going to put the standoff in the front part, the 3x10 in the back, and then on the bottom we're going to be screwing into metal. It shows in the directions that you're supposed to put these little hex bolts in here, but they're already in here, pre-assembled inside the kit, so you don't have to do that part. We're going to put another one of these 3x8s. That's what we're putting in right here, this little hole below the servo, where the plastic servo mount went in. That's where we're going to be putting this in. So make sure we're lining this up correctly. The other three holes are going to be exposed. So we're going to put this in here just like so. Make sure, you know, CA on the top because you're going into plastic, and thread lock on the bottom, and make sure you're using the correct size screws. And one thing that you're going to note for sure is this screw says it's 22 millimeters. I believe if you do the measurement on it, last minute I think they made a 35. So this is actually going to be longer than what it says in the manual. It says 22, but it's actually going to be 35. It's longer than that. So don't worry, ignore just this 22 millimeter, 35 millimeter for what this top part is that's going into the plastic. And we're going to put that back, put that all in here, and we'll come back and review. Okay, so following this, it says also leave the screws loose at this time. I guess we're going to tighten them a little bit later on. So right now we're just putting these in just a little bit loose. Make sure we've got all the screws in just like it says. And this part here is going to be ready for this part of the frame. Make sure you sand this part down. It's got extra holes now compared to what's in the manual to accommodate for this new mounting position. So you put it here in place, it fits together. There's a hole here, 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 and one here for the battery tray mount. So we're going to put that on there, and we're going to make sure we use, you know, the allotted screws, the 3x8s that it recommends to use here. And it also says to leave these screws a little bit loose at this time. So again, we're just going to put these in to make it set right here, but we're just going to leave the screws a little bit loose at this point. So we'll come back and take another look at this after we've got these parts put on the frame. Okay, so far going pretty smooth. We've got the screws here in this part of the frame. These two, this one, they're all 3x8s. 3x8s. You might have to tap into the spare bag so you can get all the screws. But we got the mount here for the battery tray with the new recommendation. That looks like it's going to work pretty well. So we dug the main shaft out of its bag, and what we're going to want to do is lay this down on a nice level flat surface and make sure that the main shaft moves through nice and soft through this whole thing. You know, you go that nice and soft, and then you're going to start in a cross pattern, tightening all of the screws that are around the frame. You know, tighten one, make sure it's still moving smooth, tighten another one, and just make sure you're going around and doing it in a cross pattern, and that you're maintaining a flat position, and that the main shaft is able to move nice and smooth through this set of 3 bearing blocks. Okay, so we're just using this to line it up right now and get all those screws. So what we're going to do is get those tight right now and get this frame finished up and ready to go. Okay, now we got it all tightened, and we've got it so that the main shaft is moving nice and smooth on a flat surface, just the way we want it to. So we're going to put that to the side for now. I realized how I had the mount here for the battery, that if I had it like that, I'm not going to be able to use this frame mount, so I took this off. Definitely if I have this down here and I got the batteries in here, then it's not going to fit. My batteries are a little bigger than that. I got the 5,000 milliamp hour, and I'm going to do a 12 cell setup, so that's going to get in the way. I'll save that, and maybe when we're done we'll find another place where we can use it to add a little bit of extra stability and rigidity to the frame. But since we've got the frame finished and all the screws are tightened on both sides and everything's nice and smooth and straight and level, we're going to just go to the skids right here, this bag that has the landing skids. Pull this out, 2 little plastic mounts. We're also going to have to follow, you know, what it says here in the manual. There's some grub screws that we still have from an earlier bag. We're going to put those in here, make sure that the skid pipes are, you know, face the way you want them to. There's this little lower canopy mount thing right here that you may have noticed earlier that came out of the bag. Probably looked like something you haven't seen before, but yeah, this is going to go onto the bottom of the skids. It's part of, you know, holding the canopy in place at the bottom, and then put the skids into the bottom with the bottom frame holding it in place, just as it says here, with the M3 washer and the cap screws and all this stuff. There's a huge section here where it talks about the engine and the cooling fan and how to get that stuff done, but obviously we're not going to do that because we're not dealing with nitro. So make sure you have your M3 lock nut washers out to put into these little plastic parts, and you don't use any thread lock because you don't need any thread lock on those things, and that you're using the correct size screws that it recommends. Also in here, in the side of the frame, there's these little holes with 3x10 cap screws. They're going to be screwing into plastic to hold these little skid mounts in place, so make sure you don't use thread lock on those either. So we'll just put the plastic skid mounts in place first, and then after that we'll put the skids on, and then we'll come back and look at the frame with the skids. Just another heads up on the landing skids. When you put the grub screws in there, put the pipes in there, you're not going to tighten them in all the way just yet. We're going to make sure that they're fully mounted before we get those tightened. So it's going to be this plastic on here first, and then we're going to put the plastic frame, or the carbon fiber frame, in place, and then we're going to put the skids on. Make sure you're following the manual step by step, and then once you get it on and it's mounted, then you can tighten the grub screws to make sure that the pipes are in place exactly how you want them. Okay, so here we go. We've got the skids on here, and we made sure that we sandwiched the bottom plate between the skids and the main frame setup. We use these little plastic inserts here at the front and the back. We didn't tighten the grub screws until we made sure that they were placed as we wanted them. Make sure you use these M3 lock nuts slide it in here. As it says on page 36 of the manual here, we're using the 3x14 with some M3 washers to hold those into the little plastic mounts inside the main frame with the bottom plate sandwiched in between. What we're going to do with this second bracket is, since we're mounting the battery up here in the top frame and there's no room for it if it's in the bottom the way it is, we're going to cut along this little line here using a little rotary cutting tool. What I'm going to use is my nice little Dremel tool, cut along the top the way it's supposed to be, and then we're going to put that in the little middle section of the helicopter just for support there inside the frame. And the holes will line up perfectly. We'll put it in there, and we're going to screw some 14mm screws up in there, just like it says here on page 122 on the electrical section. We're going to line up the holes after we cut up the bottom part here, screw the 3x8 in the side, and then we're going to screw the 3x14 in the bottom with the washer. So this is what we're going to do with our second brace. We've got the first one up here inside the frame, and then the second one's going to be used in here. We're going to cut it in half. So I'm going to do that part now, and I'll come back and show you what it looks like inside the frame here once we've cut it and we've got it lined up here. Otherwise, this part here, see how it's just got too much flexibility. You know, it's okay in the front and the back, but it looks like this is the best place to mount the batteries up here, and you can't use the full thing or the batteries won't fit in, so we're just going to have to cut it along the line. Okay, one thing you've got to make sure you do when you cut this little frame mount down to size, I know this isn't the prettiest one, but it's going to be functional. Make sure that you get one of these hex screws that has the holes in it, and make sure you line the holes up with the holes inside the frame mount, so that when you put it like this and put it in the frame, that you can screw up through the bottom here. Otherwise, if you don't line up the holes, it's not going to work out so well.